Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most dramatic turns in the Russia-Ukraine war, a moment that has left the Kremlin shaken, Russian commanders stunned, and the entire world watching closely. Ukraine has launched one of its most intense and coordinated strikes on Crimea to date, hitting military assets that Moscow once considered completely untouchable. What happened over the last several days has shifted the balance on the southern front, exposed deep vulnerabilities in Russia's defense network, and raised serious questions about how long Moscow can hold on to what it calls its crown jewel. Let's break down how Ukraine managed to rain hell on Crimea and why this moment could mark a turning point in the war. Ukraine's latest strikes didn't come out of nowhere. They were the result of months of planning, intelligence gathering, and careful timing. Kiev waited for the right moment, when Russian air defenses were stretched thin, when troop rotations were underway, and when the Black Sea Fleet was caught off balance. When the first wave of missiles launched, they weren't simply aimed at causing chaos. They were targeted at the backbone of Russia's logistics and military infrastructure in Crimea. Radar stations, ammunition depots, command centers, and even docks used to service warships. The precision of these strikes revealed something important. Ukraine is not just reacting anymore. It is systematically dismantling Russia's ability to wage war in the south. One of the most significant hits was on a major Russian command post near Sevastopol. For months, it had been a hub for directing operations across the Kherson and Zaporizhia fronts. The strike didn't just destroy buildings. It wiped out communications arrays, encrypted systems, and key officers inside. Russia tried to downplay it, as usual, but satellite images and local reports made denial impossible. When command structures collapse, so does coordination on the front lines, and that's exactly what Ukraine was counting on. Another critical blow came when several large ammunition depots were struck in rapid succession. These weren't small stockpiles. They were massive facilities storing artillery shells, air defense missiles, fuel reserves, and drone systems. Videos from Crimea showed towering fireballs, shockwaves rolling across the landscape, and debris raining down kilometers away. Each depot lost represents not just a setback, but weeks, or even months, of supply problems for Russian troops fighting deeper inside Ukraine. Without ammunition, Russia can't sustain heavy offensive operations. Without fuel, its vehicles are nothing more than metal shells. Ukraine knew this and hit where it hurt the most. The strikes also exposed an issue that the Kremlin can no longer hide. Russia's Black Sea Fleet is collapsing. Over the past year, Ukraine has chipped away at it, destroying ships, disabling ports, and forcing the fleet to retreat from large portions of the sea. But this recent strike on Crimea accelerated that collapse. Several dry docks and repair facilities were hit, leaving damaged Russian ships with nowhere to go for maintenance. When a navy loses its ability to repair vessels, it effectively loses its advantage. Even the fearsome Kalibr missile carriers, once a symbol of Russian naval power, are increasingly vulnerable. Ukraine's message was clear: nowhere in Crimea is safe anymore. But there's another dimension to this operation's psychological warfare. Crimea has been central to Putin's narrative for more than a decade. He presented it as a triumph, proof of Russia's strength and restoration of national pride. Losing control over it, or even looking like he can't defend it, is politically devastating. The explosions that lit up the Crimean night weren't just military strikes. They were symbolic blows to Putin's image. Residents reported panic, traffic jams on highways heading toward Russia, and long lines at gas stations. When civilians start to doubt their safety, pressure builds inside the Kremlin. Even loyal supporters can begin to question whether Putin can still protect what he seized. Ukraine also targeted the military airfields that Russia uses to launch drone attacks against cities like Odessa and Mykolaiv. Several aircraft were damaged or destroyed, including surveillance planes and strike drones that have been terrorizing Ukrainian civilians. The strikes disabled runways, fuel storage, and radar installations. The result: Russia's ability to launch coordinated aerial attacks from Crimea has been severely weakened. Each destroyed aircraft represents millions of dollars lost and months of production time replaced. It's a strategic victory that will save Ukrainian lives in the weeks ahead. The timing of Ukraine's offensive is also important. Winter is approaching, and both militaries are preparing for a shift in operations. By hitting Crimea now, Ukraine has forced Russia into crisis mode right before the most difficult season of the year. Instead of planning winter offensives, Moscow is scrambling to rebuild defenses, relocate assets, and protect what remains of the Black Sea Fleet. Ukraine's strikes didn't just damage physical targets. They disrupted Russia's entire timeline for the winter campaign. What makes this moment especially significant is how Ukraine executed the operation. It wasn't just missiles. It was drones, electronic warfare, decoy attacks, and coordinated timing. Dozens of drones overloaded Russian radar systems before the real missiles arrived. Electronic interference blinded air defense stations at key moments. Fake signals tricked Russian commanders into thinking the attack was coming from a different direction. The complexity of the operation shows how far Ukraine's military has evolved. This wasn't the Ukraine of 2014. This was a modern fighting force capable of challenging one of the world's largest militaries and winning. Russia's response has also been telling. Kremlin officials have issued statements full of contradictions, claiming they intercepted everything while video evidence shows massive explosions. Russian military bloggers, normally loyal to the regime, have expressed fury, demanding to know how Ukraine managed to bypass so many defenses. Some are openly questioning the competence of top commanders. When internal criticism reaches this level, it's a sign that morale is eroding. This doesn't mean the war is over. Russia still has significant resources, and Crimea remains heavily militarized. But what Ukraine achieved is a clear demonstration that the peninsula is no longer beyond reach. Every strike weakens Russia's grip. Every explosion undermines Putin's authority. Every successful operation restores confidence among Ukraine's allies and sends a warning to Moscow. The days of uncontested control over Crimea are ending. Ukraine's goal isn't just to hit military targets. It's to make Crimea impossible for Russia to use as a base of operations. And with each attack, that goal moves closer to reality. The strikes have forced Russia to move aircraft further inland, distribute ammunition across smaller locations, and deploy expensive air defense systems away from other critical fronts. This stretching of resources is exactly what Ukraine hoped for. A scattered army is a weaker army. As the dust settles, the world is rethinking its assumptions. For months, analysts wondered whether Ukraine could regain momentum. Now the answer is clear. Not only can Ukraine strike deep into occupied territory, but it can do so in ways that fundamentally change the strategic landscape. Crimea, once seen as a fortress, is now a battlefield, and one where Ukraine is gaining the upper hand. This operation marks more than just a military victory. It signals a shift in the war, a blow to Putin's political narrative, and a moment of renewed strength for Ukraine. What happens next could shape the entire trajectory of the conflict. But one thing is undeniable. Ukraine has shown that Crimea is no longer untouchable, and Russia is running out of places to hide. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates as this story continues to unfold.